Hi, David.
Hello, more afternoon.
How's it going?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Busy.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not the only one that I've been speaking to who says that they're actually incredibly busy whilst we're all at home. So what's keeping you busy whilst in lockdown?
As well as being the chairman of the Bodmin Railway, I, as if one railway was not enough, I own my own narrow gauge steam railway in the Forest of Dean, and we live on site. So whilst we're not working at the moment and we're not open, there's obviously quite a lot of grass to cut and jobs like that. And there's 2 children at home and a dog and 2 horses. So and of course my tractors need a lot of looking after. So we are very busy. I've never worked so hard in my life. So.
Yeah, more than enough to be getting on with.
I'm looking forward to the end of lockdown so I can go on holiday and have a rest. So yeah. Yes,
I'm not surprised. Yeah, my children are keeping me busy and not always being massively helpful with, with staying at home. But yeah, there we go. So it's not the first time that I've caught up with you, because obviously we've been having chats about the railway and what's been happening during this kind of very strange time for us all. But the idea behind these conversations, these kind of crib time chat line chats, is to kind of take the opportunities to have a conversation with some people who there are some at the railway kind of know really well, and others who maybe don't know so much about, and kind of where it all kind of started for them with their interest in railways. And I think that you're definitely a good person to speak to about that. So for those who don't know, you've got quite a long-standing history with the Bodmin and Wenford Railway, and where did it start?
Well, I think to say it was in the blood would be an understatement. It's been indoctrinated into me most of my life. My father grew up in Cornwall, although I've never lived in Cornwall. And family holidays before I was even born were always to Cornwall in the caravan. And my father got involved initially at the Bugle Steam Railway with the Cornish Steam Loco Preservation Society. And then latterly at Bodmin, when the CSLPS moved from Bugle to Bodmin, and he became a volunteer, living a mere 282 miles away. And obviously I would tag along because the alternative was stay at home with mum, and who wants to do that? So I have been at the railway literally my entire life. And it's very, very much a part of me, and has completely shaped what I do now and what I've done before and my career I've had and everything I've done. So yes, it's very much a part of me.
So going along to the railway as a child, what are kind of your early memories of being there?
Well, actually, I've told this story a lot of times, so apologies to those that have heard it before, but my very earliest memory as a child, I'm 3 years old-ish, sat in my buggy pushchair on the platform at Bodmin General. It's a Thomas the Tank Engine weekend, and the train is off out down the line. And in those days, we didn't used to run breakdown rides or anything in the yard. So we had little old Alfred, which is like the single best engine at the railway by a long way. Was pottering around the yard, acting out stories in the vein of a Thomas the Tank story. So the general manager at the time, Keith, used to narrate the stories and act as the physically challenged controller. And I can remember this particular story really, really clearly, where the Fat Controller went across to the yard and asked Diesel, which was played by our Class 10, to take some old scrap wagons to the scrapyard up the line. And he said very clearly, only take the first 2 wagons, the rest are to be kept. But Diesel didn't like wagons, so he took all 5. And of course, the 3 good wagons that tagged along for the ride put their brakes on and made Diesel overheat and blow a gasket and fail. So the Fat Controller went storming off down the platform through the hordes of children, with me and my sister there as well, and banged on the engine shed door really loudly, and the doors flew open, and inside is Alfred, and you could see all this from the station, and he asked Alfred to be a really useful engine and go and rescue these trucks. So Alfred dutifully comes out, chuffs up the yard and hooks onto this little train and drags it all back to the station and saves the day. So, and I was about 3 and I can remember that like it was yesterday. And so my love of the railways, Thomas the Tank, and in particular Alfred, really started at that point. So yes, that is the very earliest memory at about 3. And then latterly, obviously I wasn't terribly useful at 3. And I have a 3-year-old daughter now, and I can now see how very unuseful I would have been at the railway at 3 years old. So that was 3. And then latterly 6, 7, 8, I would go for half days when we were on holiday. And I would tend to be at the station end where it was notionally safer to leave a 6-year-old to wander around on a railway line. I used to work for the station staff there, tended to do cleaning jobs. And one of the jobs I liked doing was unloading all of the old luggage cases off the big trolleys and dusting them off and sweep the trolley and then load them all back on in a different order so it looked like they'd been used. And but my timing was always dreadful. So I would tend to unload them all and spread them out across the entire platform just as the train was due back. So the train would pull into the station and these hordes of passengers would descend on the platform and all trip over all these luggage cases that I had strewn everywhere. And dear old Keith, the general manager, must have tore his hair out. And he always used to complain that I'd done it too quickly because he didn't have another job lined up for me quick enough. So that's the very early memories. And then the world was very different. I mean, I'm only 35. The world was very different back then. At 11, 12, I was down the workshop, getting stuck in on restoration work, on wagons, and I would spend days and days doing the most boring of jobs, which you could never get me to do at home. But I was perfectly happy to do at Bodmin, as long as I could go and sit and eat my lunch on Alfred's footplate over in the shed out the way. So yeah, that's the very early days.
Wow. And so kind of obviously you said it kind of really shaped your involvement at the railway, but kind of your career elsewhere. So what did you kind of go on to do? Kind of what's led you to now at your own railway?
Yeah. So when I went through school, I was always interested in engineering, but I wasn't. I was reasonably practical, but I was better at organising things and doing things. So I actually went to university in Sheffield and studied transport management. My intention being to work for the big railway. And I was fortunate at the end of my degree to get onto the Network Rail Graduate Management Training Scheme, where I survived a grand total of about 11 months. I didn't really fit in. It turns out at that point in time, and I should stress this is quite a while ago, and that the railway has changed. But in those days, Network Rail didn't actually like people that were interested in railways because they wanted to change the way the railway ran. So the last thing you want are a load of people that know how to run a railway. So as soon as they discovered I knew about railways, they sent me straight off to head office in some dark little corner on the 14th floor in London, as far away from the railway as you can get in London. And one of the main things I was responsible for was organising bus replacement services for railway engineering projects, which I can tell you, for someone that wants to run a railway, is the single most demoralising thing you can be asked to do is write a bus timetable. So after 11 months of that, I decided I'd had enough. And I was fortunate in that I'd met some good people in Network Rail, and I went to work in the Isle of Man as a survey engineer, rebuilding the Manx Electric Railway, which is a nationalised, government-owned railway, but is still running with its original tram cars from the 1890s up the side of the mountain in the Isle of Man. So it's very much a heritage railway, but technically a public transport thing. So it's a bit of everything. And that was absolutely fabulous to spend a winter in the worst weather imaginable, on the Isle of Man. But another anecdote from the Isle of Man times, if you look at the Reverend Audrey's map of the island of Sodor, which he was asked to draw by his son after about the fourth book, because after the fourth book, Christopher Audrey said, well, where is all of this? Why can't we just go there? So the Reverend Audrey drew the island of Sodor, and that map is still used in the opening titles of even the shows they're making today. And if you look carefully, the outline of Cumbria in the UK is to the right of the map, to the east of the island. To the west of the island is the Isle of Man. So if you overlay a modern road map of the Isle of Man and scale it correctly and put it on there, and then plot where my cottage was on the Isle of Man, you'll discover that by sheer chance, I lived in the closest real house to Thomas's branch line that exists. So, and don't ask me how I know that. I had far too much free time on my hands in the evenings in the Isle of Man. So, and obviously the only thing to do is read Thomas the Tank books, isn't it? So, so I lived as close as you can get to Thomas's branch line. So, which my 9-year-old son is most envious of. So,
wow, absolutely. You'd be the envy of many a Thomas fan now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
After the Isle of Man, I had worked in a theme park running a narrow gauge railway there whilst at university as a summer job, and ended up running that pretty much. And I went back there after the Isle of Man for 2 or 3 years at a higher level, and we did a lot of work there. And then I was headhunted to come and run what is the Perrygrove Railway, where I am now, for the previous owners who wanted to semi-retire. And then after a couple of years, when they fully retired, my wife and I bought the Perrygrove Railway, and we've now owned it for 6 or 7 years. So I've got probably you can see it just behind me, all that side there, Spirit of Adventure there, 15-inch gauge train set in the back garden. So I'm very lucky. I don't want to work for anybody else ever again now. I was pretty unemployable before, and they'd be hopeless now.
So. Okay. So obviously there's been kind of connection with the Bodmin and Wenford Railway kind of all of your life, kind of throughout all of these times, and that kind of leads us on now to the fact that you are the chairman of the PLC.
I am.
So remind me, how long ago did you become chairman? It's not too
not that long. It feels, because of all the changes that have happened in the last little while, it feels like I've been doing this a long while. I actually only became chairman in August last year, would you believe? Yeah. So I'm only about 9 months in.
But previously you were on the board, yeah?
I was, yes. I've been a director for 7 years, something like that, a long while. So, and there's been a lot of change in that time. The railway is a very different place to what it was 7-10 years ago. And I must say, it probably won't be like it was 10 years ago ever again. And I think they say you live through golden ages without realising it. It really is true. Go back 10 years to the railway, it was a very different place. And I don't think any of us appreciated at the time how good we had it. And it's more of a struggle now, but the railway has a good future, but it will look very different to how it looked a few years ago.
Yeah. I think, with the benefit of hindsight, we can look back on a lot of things, couldn't we? Certainly from, the position that we're in now. I mean, there's been a number of kind of challenges for the railway over even just the last kind of 3 months, shall we
Absolutely.
say?
Absolutely.
And yeah, kind of certainly kind of challenging times ahead. But it's a very difficult question to ask. But kind of what would you like to see for us at the railway, kind of going forward? And obviously some of that might be about kind of our lockdown status, but also I think we can look a bit further beyond that as well. I think
absolutely. The one sense you get when you go to a place like Bodmin or any heritage railway actually is the permanence of it. Very easy to sit at home in your office on the Zoom board meetings that we've been doing a lot of in the last few weeks and getting very worried about the money. and getting very worried about how we're going to employ people, how we're going to pay the bills, how do we meet social distancing to reopen, how do we catch up with the backlog of maintenance. Huge questions, huge amounts of work going on in the background. Most of the volunteers don't realise how much work goes on in the background by a very small group of people. But actually, when you turn up and you stand on the platform and you look at it, you think, actually, a lot of this is nearly 200 years old. It's all pretty solid, heavy, chunky stuff. And it will weather this, and a lot of it will survive. It will look a bit different, and we'll operate it differently. We'll use it differently. We'll come to appreciate different parts of it more or less so. But it will be there. And that's the case with most of our heritage, whether that be railway or not. So rather than dwell on what we're going to do in the next 3 months to survive, what we're going to do for the next 3 months to survive is knuckle down, spend as little as we can, raise as much as we can, extrapolate all the energy and enthusiasm of our volunteers to get the place kick-started as soon as we're possibly allowed. We're going to find a way to open. Some railways are talking about opening next year. We are going to open this year if we possibly can. And we'll run trains 10% capacity if we have to, because we want to run the trains. And it's better for the engines to run. It's better for the track to be run on. All of this stuff likes to be used. And it's better for the morale of our volunteers and the community we support to run. So we will do our best to run. But what would I like to see at the railway going forward? Well, there are 226 heritage railways in the UK. And about half of them are standard gauge, which Bodmin is, of course. But what sets them apart, what makes them all look different, what's unique about them, and what therefore is important for us to concentrate on and preserve. And it's pretty obvious, we're in China Clay country, aren't we? We are the China Clay Railway, and we need to do so much more at telling the story of China Clay. The railway is not just a train set, I've said that many times. It's not somewhere just to gather dusty ornaments. We're supposed to be educating and telling that story going forward, so that my 9-year-old son ends up as passionate about it as I am, and as also, and then maybe my grandchildren one day. It'll be fabulous to think that they will continue this, but they're only going to do that if we can tell the story, and telling the story is so important. So what have we got that's unique? It's China Clay. What are we going to do with it? Well, Alfred and Judy, obviously. We've got even some of our diesels, our Class 37, our Class 10 are very unique to the China Clay story. Our Pannier and Prairie and our 42 Great Western engines are all very China Clay engines. We've got 9 China Clay wagons now that we've gradually built up and acquired from other railways, quite a few in the last 2 years. We've got to get all that stuff together. We've got to get it all going again and make it work. And do you know what? There's very little commercial argument for any of that. So my job as the chairman of the PLC is to run a commercial company. If the railway does not make money, it does not have the money to reinvest into its equipment and infrastructure and support the projects that we would like to do. But obviously, despite being that chairman, I'm there because I love the railway and I love Bodmin. And so therefore, at the bottom of that commercial message is actually a passion to deliver the China Clay Railway. And we're going to do that, and it might take 10 years, but we're going to do that, and it's going to become the China Clay Railway, and it's going to become one of the better museum accredited places in Cornwall eventually. And it's going to take time and skill, and it needs a lot of enthusiasm, and it needs a lot of ideas, because actually some of us have been there a long while, and we've seen a lot of it, and we need some people to come along and tell us that we're wrong, and there were things we tried 10 years ago that we didn't think worked. Well, maybe they'll work now. And we need some new ideas. And that doesn't come from people that have been there 30 years. The 30 years service, which is all the older generation that have been driving trains for 30 years rather than getting in the way of them like me, you need that skill, you need that experience to pass on that message. You've got to have the fresh ideas coming in as well. So recruiting a new generation of people that are enthusiastic, not necessarily enthusiasts, is really important to the railway. And I should say, some of the the best people we've ever had that have run the railway at Bodmin have not been interested in railways, and they've been interested in community and people and history, and not necessarily railways. So don't for a minute think this is the preserve of train spotters. It's absolutely not.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's something that I've been thinking about more and more whilst we've actually been kind of away from the place. I suppose it's one of the kind of the positives of this experience is you're getting a bit of distance and space to think about things that sometimes you're so close to, you just don't have the opportunity. And actually, you know, telling the stories, both about kind of the history of the railway from its origins in China Clay, but also that more recent history of all of those people who've contributed to kind of getting us to where we are today, and I think every journey there's a story behind, and I think that's really something that I'm excited to kind of explore a bit more. So yeah, I think it's something that others have been talking about as well. You don't have to be a railway enthusiast to find something that captures your interest or that kind of that you want to be a part of at Bodmin. So yeah,
I think you're right. And actually, if you asked me right now as chairman, where are our shortages, I would say we've got lots of people that want to be engine drivers. We actually do need more. We don't have enough, amazingly. But we're actually, the bit we need right now, do you know what? We need somebody that's really good at fundraising. We need some people that are really good at the legal stuff. We need some people that are good at marketing. We need some gardeners. We need people that are good storytellers, actually, to interact with our customers, who can portray that image and that message. So don't for a minute think you've got to like or know about trains to get involved. We can teach you the nuts and bolts. That's the easy bit. Getting that message across to people is the hardest bit. And actually, we need people of a whole range of skills. Yeah,
definitely. I think the kind of the community around the railway that we have, that's the bit that I'm kind of missing at the moment. It's those faces that we see, because I think it means so much to the people who kind of come in and come and kind of contribute their time, and so I think hopefully these kind of conversations will be keeping people in touch with us all at home a bit as well. I think that's the plan.
Well, I must say that actually the railway is, as you say, very much about the people. And if you ask me about the things that have shaped my life and my career and my choices and what I've done, it's not about Alfred and Judy, sadly. It's about the people that have brought me up and educated me and taught me the life skills I've needed to go on and do the things I do. And there are so many of them at Bodmin, and many of them have now passed on. And it's important that we keep their memories alive and their skills alive. And you know what, we're doing a good job of that, actually. One or two have rubbed off more than most, and you can see that around the railway. And it amazed me, actually, when dear old Tony Hallworth died last year, who was our senior engineman at the time. He touched more people than anybody else I can remember at that railway. What I had not realised is he touched people far beyond the Bodmin Railway. People had never met him. And in fact, when he died here at Perrygrove, it really hit all of my drivers here. And I had no idea how much I used to talk about him to them in their training and their assessment. And I would often say, oh, crikey, good job, Hallworth didn't catch you doing that. And I never knew I did it. And when he died, it really hit everyone here. Most of them had never even met the guy. So it does show that there are people there, and it's about people that make people go back and make it the community and the family that it is. So,
yeah, and also, you're kind of talking there about that kind of responsibility as well. You've mentioned it a few times about kind of how we take responsibility for kind of passing things on to kind of that future generation. Obviously, I think you've said to me before, your children love the trains, and it's
they don't have a lot of choice, really.
Well, there is that, but it's kind of that inspiration as well, for people, something that kind of captures their captures their attention and really kind of, yeah, makes an impact. Yeah,
very much so.
And I think we feel that responsibility at the railway to kind of, you know, share those stories and share that passion. Yeah.
Very much so. And I can assure you, I feel that responsibility on other levels, but go up to the job of chairman and making it all hang together. And the board carry a lot of responsibility to make sure the place survives this crisis and this pandemic. And it's not a foregone conclusion, actually. I mean, it really does hang in the balance. I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that we will weather this. I hope we will, and I shall do my level best to make sure we do. But nothing is certain anymore, is it?
No, absolutely. And yeah, I think kind of going forward, so this is a difficult question, actually. I think you've talked about that balance between, you know, kind of the input of people who are kind of enthusiasts, and, you know, the input of people kind of from outside the railway who are bringing kind of other skills and interests, and the people who've been there, you know, a long time, as well as kind of, you know, a new generation of people kind of coming in, and in a lot of ways you kind of embody and are kind of having to balance an extraordinary number of those kind of considerations, and I think that, yeah, that should be acknowledged, because that's, you know, not an easy thing to be having to do. And
I get a lot of people say to me, well, why don't you do this, or why don't we do that? And I'm always very conscious. I don't want to be the person that says, oh, it just doesn't work. But sometimes we do a lot of work in the background, and we do an awful lot of number crunching. And you know what? Nothing's as simple as it appears. I don't envy any politician running the country at this moment. They're all going to get it wrong, aren't they? And everyone will tell you what they're getting wrong, but not very many people tell you what people get right. So you're right, there is a big balance to do. And there's a lot of people, it's not just me, I don't run the railway on my own. Crikey, I don't do a fraction of the work that some people do on the board, or in the wider management team, or the society committee, or the trustees, or the various other little groups that make up the railway family. We're a very wide-ranging and diverse group. And perhaps one of the things I do is just bring some of it together and shout louder to shut them all up when they've all said too much. So.
Okay, well, I haven't had to do any shouting, so that's good. And not trying to shut you up, but I think that maybe I should let you go. So what's next on your jobs list? What's keeping you busy for the rest of the afternoon?
Well, more grass cutting, actually. There's a lot. There's 22 acres here, and the mower's 4 foot wide. So there's a lot of grass to cut. But it's a fabulous sunny day. It's about 24 degrees here. There's a gentle breeze. So I shall change my hat to a straw hat and go off out in the sunshine and cut some grass. So and then actually, by sheer chance, it's Cornish pasty for tea tonight. So I shan't be late for my dinner either.
Superb. So, ideal.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, David. I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will speak again soon. But hopefully, we will all be speaking again in person, on a train, or watching one depart from the station in the not too distant future at Bodmin General. So
absolutely, hopefully.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Cheers, David. Bye.
Bye bye.